Nilqawkom għal program ieħor tal-intervista u illum ħankunu għedin niddiskutu sport ieħor illi jiġi pratikat hawn Malta u illi qiegħed jikber ftit ftit ukoll. Illum ħan niddiskutu il-Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu u għalhekk miegħi għandi lil Michelle Bonicci Mallija. How are you?
Hi, Catherine. I'm very well. Thank you. And yourself?
I'm good, thank you.
Awesome.
How do you feel? You've just arrived from London a few weeks ago because you were competing, right?
Correct. Yes, I was in London, I believe it was about 2 weeks ago, at the IBJJF London International Open. And it was another great experience, as all of them are. A smaller competition than most of my usual ones, but it was a nice experience, absolutely.
And when we start to discuss Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's a type of martial arts, but can you explain a bit to me, how is it different?
So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a grappling form of martial arts. So there's no striking, there's no punches. It focuses on groundwork. It's similar to judo and to wrestling. So judo and wrestling also have no striking, but it focuses more on the ground aspect. So whereas judo and wrestling focus on stand-up, taking down the other person or doing throws, Jiu-Jitsu is focused on controlling the opponent when you're on the ground and then performing a number of joint locks or chokes to submit them, essentially.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Yes.
How did you get into the sport?
I was actually an athlete before. I used to run for several years, but then I had an injury. I stopped for a while. I was trying to find myself. I did some tennis. Wasn't really for me, it was more for fun, but I wanted something I could compete in. And I came across Jiu-Jitsu, I think accidentally. I heard somebody talking about it. I just went online to see if there was anything in Malta, and I found this small club, maybe like 5 people at the time. It had just started in a garage in Vgura. And I'm like, okay, I'll go check it out. And I did, and it was love at first sight. I just loved it. It was a really great first experience for me. And since then, I've just never stopped.
And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's quite a growing sport in Malta.
In Malta and worldwide. So it's a relatively new sport. I mean, it goes back several decades now, of course. But it really started to gain momentum, I feel, in the past couple of decades. And in the past 10 years, I've seen a real big growth, both worldwide, competition-wise. They've started to monetize competitions as well. So people who win can win substantial prizes. The following as well has really grown. So people are watching it more. And even in Malta, we've got a number of clubs now. So whereas we started in this tiny little garage with 5 people, now there's a number of different gyms across the island, basically, who practice. A lot of women as well. So when I started, I was the only woman.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I was the only woman for about 7 years, training alone with the men. It was challenging in its own way, but it was still a great experience. Now, though, at the gym I train at, we've got a large group of women, 20 plus, I would say, training
Wow.
there. Yes, it's amazing to see.
How was it to basically literally go into a men's environment and train this kind of sport?
I mean, it's challenging. I think all sports have its challenge. I was a runner before, so there were obviously women who used to run with me as well, but I was always used to being around men in sports. So it wasn't necessarily a new thing. What was intimidating perhaps was the fact that it was a combat sport. So you've got one-on-one interaction where you're trying to overpower someone who's physically larger and stronger than you. But what I loved about Jiu-Jitsu was that if you really studied the technique and you did it right, you could actually overpower somebody larger and stronger than yourself. And I found that really attractive. And that's sort of the path I took. I just really, really loved that. So like I could tell even in training, as I was training with bigger people, that I could actually handle them. And of course, that's kind of addictive in its own way, I suppose.
And I think it's a very nice sport because it's also a very respectful sport, I feel, even because of its heritage.
Absolutely. So Jiu-Jitsu comes down from very old martial arts, such as judo and traditional Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. And then it took its own sort of path in Brazil, where the Gracie family sort of changed it, adapted it, and it became Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, essentially. So where we focus again largely on grappling and groundwork. And I feel like martial arts and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, not just Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but all kinds of martial arts teach discipline, teach dedication. I feel like as a sport, it's not just a sport. I suppose that's why it's called martial arts, because I feel like it's an art as well.
And when we look at your career, you've been abroad, you've
Yes.
represented Malta, you've even won international competitions too. How does it feel? How do you feel when you are going abroad? Let's start with that.
I've always loved competing. So, like I said, I was in athletics before, and we used to compete all the time. Mostly in Malta, it was local, but we used to have, I think it was the MAAA League, which was a road league, and then we used to have our track races, and every Saturday was race day. So I've grown up used to competitions, and when I went into jiu-jitsu, there was nothing local, obviously, because it was very new. So obviously we turned to look abroad and find competitions in Europe that we could compete in. And it was extremely exciting. I remember the first competition I went to was what was called the Milano Challenge in Milan. I was a white belt at the time, so I just like 5 months training maybe, and I was so excited and so nervous. Notwithstanding I had competed so many times before, I remember just a wreck. And I went out there, and I don't know what happened. I honestly don't remember. But I came away with a gold medal, and
wow.
from then on I was just hooked. I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is just, the feeling was amazing.
With the belts, how many belts are there for you to get? And also, how does one go about getting them? What's the process?
So it differs from kids and adults. So kids have more belts, and they do that, I believe, because kids tend to be a little more impatient. They like to see their progress, so they fit in more belt colors for them so they can have a clearer track of their progress. The adults go through white, blue, purple, brown, black. So white and blue would be considered an amateur level. Purple would be intermediate, and then brown and black is advanced.
Okay, that's very interesting.
And to achieve the belt, it really depends on your instructor, so your coach. We don't really do examinations for belts like perhaps other types of martial arts do. It's more, we look at the practical aspect and how a person performs both during live sparring and in competitions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and also when we look at your career, during some time you had to stop because you got pregnant
Yes,
too.
yes, absolutely. So I was actually 7 years in to training. And obviously I got married. Myself and my husband wanted to start a family, and sort of I decided, okay, so let's go ahead. I was of the impression that I would continue training throughout, maybe not jiu-jitsu for the full term of the pregnancy, because obviously there's you grow substantially big when you're pregnant, and it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do to spar on the floor when you're that large. But I was really hoping I could at least get through most of my pregnancy. Unfortunately, I had quite a difficult pregnancy, in that I had a lot of morning sickness. I struggled with fatigue, so it didn't really pan out the way I wanted it to. Even just general fitness wise. So I even struggled just getting into the gym and doing just basic exercises essentially. So I kind of let that go for a while. And I felt it a lot afterwards. So I didn't just have one child, I had three. So yes, I was out for a few years. And then when I decided I wanted to get back into it, it did take some time for me to sort of get back to that place where I felt I was almost there, if you know what I mean.
How difficult was it? Because it was exciting to start a new family, but sport has always been a part of your life.
Yes.
So it's like you had to give that up for some time.
Absolutely. No, it wasn't easy, and I missed it dearly. Like it was a big sacrifice for me to kind of put that aside and sort of focus on my family. But at the same time, we really wanted to have that in our life. And it was also a temporary thing. It was 6 to 7 years, and then I kind of got back to it, and I have the rest of my life to do this
Exactly.
now, so it works out well.
Do you see yourself maybe teaching other people too?
I mean, right now I'm sort of focused on me, and I know that sounds perhaps a little self-centered, but I did give up 7 years, and I'd love to sort of just get those few years where I can focus on myself, get in those few more competitions, and feel like I've been there and done that, if you know what I mean. And then, yes, eventually I'd love to sort of pass on that knowledge to other people. I have 3 kids, and I started teaching them as well myself. And eventually perhaps I'll teach it at the gym. and we'll see where that takes us. But that's definitely planned for the future, absolutely.
And I guess there would be loads of opportunities too, because as you said, it's a growing sport in Malta.
Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, from when I began till now, the difference is huge. So many people now are training. I think at our gym alone, we've got about 200.
Wow.
Yes, 200 athletes who come in to train, obviously at different times, but definitely. So there's definitely a lot of room for growth, and there's a lot of places I can take this. So it's exciting. We'll see where we go with it.
When we look at this sport of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, currently, if we look at it from a global point of view, it is not an Olympic sport, right?
No, it's not an Olympic sport yet. Mostly because there are a number of different federations that organize competitions under different rule sets, and the Olympic Committee requires that there's one federation or one committee, whatever we'd like to call it, with one rule set that governs the entire sport globally. And I haven't really seen a push in that direction, quite frankly, yet. There's been talk about it for several years, but I don't feel like there's been any action towards that goal right now, because I feel like a lot of practitioners tend to resist the move. They're not perhaps too keen on it being an Olympic sport, because from what I understand, and I stand corrected if I'm saying anything that's not quite right, but as far as I understand, the Olympic Committee can impose certain rules and regulations on the sport, either to make it safer or to make it more entertaining, or whatever the case may be. And it's happened in other martial arts. I believe it happened in judo and even in taekwondo, I think, in the past, if I'm not mistaken. And they feel it might water the sport down and also take away from its self-defense aspect. And also, apart from that, the sport is doing so well on a global level on its own. I mean, like I said, it's attracting large number of youth, especially with its involvement in MMA, on UFC, and a lot of followers. So we're not sure whether we should or we shouldn't, if you know what I mean. At this point, it's sort of kind of there. But even if there was a push in that direction, I feel like we're minimum a decade away. Probably quite a long road ahead.
Because sometimes I think that's the problem, is when something then becomes too big, especially in the sports world that we are currently living in, then it sort of gets out of hand. And I think even for the athletes, it's something that you can also enjoy doing.
Yes. I mean, if you don't enjoy it, you shouldn't be doing it. I guess.
Exactly.
Right? For sure.
Does this also help as a sport from the mental side of it? To basically, if you go to a competition, you have to go through different rounds, I suppose, until you get to a final. So
depending on how many people sign up, absolutely. So for the Europeans, for instance, last year I had 3 matches. And sort of you need to prepare yourself for how to handle that, both from a physical perspective. So you don't want to waste all your energy in your first round, because you've got another 2 rounds coming in after that. At the same time, you need to make it to that second round too. So you need to be strategic about how you use your energy, and also staying focused, because you don't want to have distractions between matches. You need to sort of stay in the moment, and not sort of get taken away. I usually do that. I don't know, you might have seen some photos of me with a pair of headphones on, and I'm kind of just in my own world. Sometimes I listen to music, sometimes I don't, really depending on my mood. I usually don't talk to anyone. I don't play with my phone. At most, I'll speak to my coach, so he'll give me advice on my next match regarding strategies and what I should do. But that would be it. And then I'll usually just take it off 20 seconds before I'm stepping on the mat. So yeah, that would be how I approach it. But everybody's different, and everybody has their own way of doing it.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
And would you normally play the 3 rounds? Would you have all of them in one day, or would you have them on separate days?
Usually within, I would say, an hour and a half, you'd be done.
Okay.
In the World Masters, I had 3 fights as well. This was in Las Vegas in August.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and it was a lovely experience. But I remember I had 2 matches which were well spaced, but then for my final, they were almost going to put me on within a few minutes. In fact, but they're usually quite understanding. I spoke to the guy. I'm like, I've just finished my match. My competitor had been resting for 10 minutes. give me a moment. But usually it will be 10 minutes between matches, let's say 10 minutes between matches. So yes, you need to have some good endurance.
When maybe there are matches that you end up losing, or maybe that you've done something wrong and you could have avoided it.
Absolutely.
How do you come back from that?
I mean, I would say if I had to lose because my opponent was significantly better and she's bested me, I'd be fine with that. To say, okay, she was the better woman today. I'm going to take it home. I'm going to work on it, and I'm going to make myself better. If I lose because I made a mistake, I'm going to be upset about that for sure. Because now that's on me. You know, I could have done better. I should have. I did something I shouldn't have. Perhaps I wasn't focused enough. I wasn't paying attention. That would upset me. But again, there's nothing you can do about it. You need to move on. I'll take it back to the gym and I'll make sure, or it doesn't happen next time. So.
I think that's the nice thing about sport is that sometimes we take lessons from it and we can even apply them in our personal lives, basically, too.
Yes. I think it's like a really good lesson because a lot of people feel that they always have to win. And they don't take losses well. But I always tell everybody, even at the gym, people I train with, especially the newer belts coming in, starting competing for the first time, they'll go for their first competition, lose, take it really to heart, think that they're not good at the sport just because they've lost that competition. But I always say, even the best people in the sport lose sometimes.
Exactly.
It's going to happen to everybody. There's no way you can always win. Just don't lose to learn, if you know what I mean. So take that home and work on it.
What would you tell someone who maybe they have their first fight? And at the end of the day, it is a combat sport. So there might be that element of maybe fear.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel that too. And I've competed a few times and I still feel that element of fear, that excitement. But the nice thing about jiu-jitsu is that we always train, not always, but we are able, because of the nature of the sport, to train at 100%.
Okay.
So we can, as opposed to, for example, a sport like boxing, if you're going 100% in boxing, like it's going to cause problems and perhaps damage also to your partner. But in jiu-jitsu, because there's no striking, we can go really, really hard. And that sort of mimics, it's still not quite the same thing, but it helps to bring you close to what competition would feel like.
Okay.
Again, like I said, there are levels. So competition always takes it that level extra. You never quite reach it for obvious reasons, right? Because there's no adrenaline training. But yes, for somebody who's competing for the same time, I always say the same thing. Just imagine you're stepping on the mat at the gym and you're just going to train with a visitor who's come to visit you. And I just keep it that way.
What has been maybe one of your most memorable fights or competitions that you've been to so far?
So I think for me, a competition that really stands out is obviously Europeans last year because, like as I mentioned, I was out for 7 years. I started training, and to me, I was coming back to train for fun because I love it. I never thought I was going to compete again, and then obviously how can I say I find it really hard to stay away from competitions because I love it so much. And I said, you know what, let me just I'll throw my name in and whatever happens, it doesn't matter. And I threw my name in. I didn't expect to win. I won. And it was honestly surreal. I still can't believe it. Like, it was just the most amazing feeling in the world because I really didn't think that was going to be part of my life anymore. Like, it was just the past. And then obviously after I won the Europeans, I decided to continue competing. I did International Masters in Spain. I did World Masters in Las Vegas. I did Rome Open in October. I was going to do Europeans this year, but unfortunately I had to miss it because I was unwell over Christmas. And I did London 2 weeks ago. So competition has sort of just come back for me, and it's an amazing feeling, honestly.
I think life has a way of working out.
I know, right?
Still,
absolutely. That's what I tell my husband. In fact, I'm like, just sometimes like things have their own place and their own time, and it's just meant to be that way.
And how do you manage to go to all these competitions? They take a lot of your time, but then you also have your personal life
Absolutely.
too.
So I think the most time is actually in the gym because I do train a lot. And I'll usually train really, really early in the morning at like 6 a.m. I'm in the gym. I'll do an hour and a half, go home, I have a home gym. I'll do my strength and conditioning there with my youngest because the other two are at school. And then I'll train again in the evening. Competition-wise, so when I'm traveling, if it's within Europe, it's usually a weekend. So I'll go up on Friday, be back on Monday. It's relatively short, and my husband, God bless him, he's a very patient man, covers the kids for me at home. Obviously, if it's further away, then I'll be out for longer. But we'd usually make a family holiday out of it or something.
Okay, then
It works out
still
well.
works
It
out.
works out well.
What are your plans now for this year? Any upcoming competitions?
I've won Europeans twice now, and I would love to get a gold medal at the Worlds, World Masters, the one in Las Vegas. I was hoping I'd go up this year. I'm not sure if I'm going to manage to make it, but if not, it would be next year. So that's really on my bucket list. I feel like I would be complete if I just get a world medal at this point.
And one question that I always ask everyone who comes over on the program is, so imagine if you have a time machine and you can go in this time machine and you can either go further back in time or you can go further in the future.
Okay.
And you can go to maybe any competition. Maybe there's an athlete who you would like to compete against. Where would you
Okay.
go?
It's a big question.
And why?
I have to pick forward the back. I can't stay present.
If you would like to stay present, you can do so too.
Because I don't think I'd change anything, honestly. I mean, at a point before I started, I was a bit sad that I stopped my career. You know, I wasn't sad, but of course you think, what if? I stopped my jiu-jitsu career and I stopped for so many years. But now looking back, I feel like it really just fell into place because I went back into it. I'm right where I want to be. So I think I'll stay put.
That's very nice. I think that sends a really nice message to also those who are viewing, you know, because sometimes we would be like, is this the right decision? And
I know.
you'd look at it in the future then.
Absolutely. And it just might be exactly where you need to be.
Exactly. Well, thanks so much for joining me for this interview. It's been really great speaking with you.
Thank you for having me, and likewise, it was lovely speaking with you. Absolutely.
Thanks so much. Aħna nerġgħu ninaqdu magħkom il-ġimgħa li ġejja nhar it-tlieta fuq TVM Sport Plus. Grazzi. Dan il-programm huwa miġġub lilkom minn Hair Looks by Naomi, Marija Mikallef Fashion Stylist, LCY Kiki,